homeschooling. Our topic today is going to be homeschooling. Why we chose to homeschool, how it went in the early years. I get a lot of questions about why we chose to homeschool, and so we're going to cover some of my reasons for homeschooling today.
So welcome to Real Life with Andrea. And I literally just recorded this video. It was like 15 minutes and no sound because I forgot to turn the mic on. Anyway, if you have not subscribed to this channel and you are liking the content that I am putting out, please subscribe to the channel. It gives you that bookmark to be able to go back and find me more easily. And if you want to be notified when I pop up new content, go ahead and hit that notification button as well, and that will let you know when you need to look for me. All right, so homeschooling, our topic for today, and really we're going to cover mostly just the whys and my early years of homeschooling. So my initial test in homeschooling was about 27 years ago, and my daughter, who at the time was 4 years old, was getting ready to go to kindergarten, and so I really wanted to homeschool her. She was just full of life, full of energy. She was full of learning. She had taught herself to read. She had potty trained herself. She just was like a sponge absorbing all of this information, and I really wanted to be the one to encourage that and to feed that. And at the time, I was doing in-home childcare, so I thought, I'm at home all day with her, so wouldn't that be wonderful? And so I got some curriculum and decided to give it a test. And back then, it wasn't very popular to homeschool. Really wasn't. Hardly anybody was doing it, so there weren't a whole lot of resources. I knew nobody who was homeschooling their kids, so I had no support. My family was not excited about it. Again, I was a single parent at that time, and nobody was really on board with that. My mother, maybe, for the most part. But there were things she had concerns about, and there were things that I had concerns about. So anyway, so we did this test. We did a couple months test, and my daughter was smart and, again, full of fun and energy, and she was lively, and she loved people, and she was self-confident, and she was independent, and she had all these wonderful characteristics that I really wanted to support. And then I started trying to teach her. And let me just tell you that all of those things that worked in her favor as a self-learner, okay, they all worked against me as her teacher. And so that independent nature became a conflict. Everything became a conflict. And I was in tears and she was in tears and it wasn't working. And because I really had no place to go to support this endeavor, I gave up and I put her in school. And she graduated from public school and it was fine. She did relatively well in school. She was very social. She played a lot of sports. She did fine. But then fast forward to when I got married and I had 2 more children, and she was 11, okay, and still homeschooling wasn't popular. We didn't discuss homeschooling, so when time came for those kids to go to school, we shipped them off to school, and I'm going to say that was kind of a very sad day in my life. I don't know if it was one of the saddest, but it was very sad. I missed the kids a lot, and so after a few years, when they were kind of I guess they were in 2nd and 3rd grade, I started substitute teaching. And when I started substituting teaching in the school and realized what things were like at school, my husband and I started having the discussion about homeschooling. And we decided that before they got to middle school, we were going to homeschool because the middle school was one of the biggest cesspools. I use that term, and not lightly. It was so horrible. The teachers had no control. The administration was not supportive of the teachers. The kids were horrible between language and bullying each other and just everything. It was one of the worst environments that I was ever in. And after I substituted there for a couple of times, I wouldn't even go back and substitute there anymore. It was so bad. And I thought, we can't send our kids someplace that I won't go. So, so we decided that we were going to prepare for that time when I was not going to work part-time anymore. I was going to be home and we were going to homeschool. So I was going to take a couple of years to figure out what we were going to do and prepare for that middle school age. And then when my kids were in the 3rd and the 4th grade, my 3rd grader, we knew they were having problems. There were a lot of events over this year with kids bullying, and we talked with the kids about how to handle it, and we talked with them how to love the kids and how not to retaliate and all these things. But at one point, my 3rd grader came home and said, it was in April, "Mom, if I have to go back to school, I'm going to take my life." And so we never sent them back again because nothing else mattered. We weren't prepared to homeschool. I wasn't prepared to homeschool. We spent the rest of the year talking about bullying and reestablishing relationship. We worked on self-esteem and just trying to get past that whole experience that they had, and whatnot. And then we took the summer and enjoyed our summer, and I prepared to find some curriculum to homeschool them in the following year. Okay, so our whole reason for homeschooling was to get them out of an environment that was toxic and beyond toxic. And so when we brought them home, when we started school the next year, I had my curriculum all ready to go, and I had my homeschool area all set up. And it took a couple of months before I realized, I'm trying to mimic school. Why am I trying to mimic school? We have so many opportunities that we could tap into because now we have all day together. And I'm going to tell you, different than my daughter, my boys and I bonded, and I don't know what they would say, although I would say that when they didn't want to do something that I wanted them to do, and it was a back and forth, I would say, well, do you guys want to go back to school? Is this not what you want to do anymore? And they'd be like, no, 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 we don't want to go to school. And so, but I think that with them, the homeschooling experience was way different, and we really enjoyed being together. We traveled. They helped me run our Matkovich family pup business. We were able to have different animals and experience. We had goats, which we bred, and we birthed, and we raised, and we sold, and we milked, and that was fun experience for a season. We had chickens, we had rabbits, which my youngest son had, and he bred them, and he sold them, and had its own little business. We had horses for a time. We tried having sheep. We were able to have cats. I mean, we were able to do so many things. We traveled. We went to Texas and Florida and Georgia and Louisiana and Missouri and Indiana, and I don't even know how many states we were able to go to and just do some fun things and learn a little bit about the state, Michigan, all these places. And so we really enjoyed life, but we never really settled on a curriculum. And my kids learned a lot. I would say that they know a lot more than the average student coming out of high school these days. But things that I didn't focus on was writing skills, so they're a little bit deficient in that. And so I learned my way of doing things was really great. They learned a lot. They had a lot of experiences. They are they were responsible. I don't know what happens when kids turn 18 and 19. It's like, I'm an adult now, and anyway, we're dealing with some things. But anyhow, they learned how to manage money. They learned how to live life. They learned how to do dishes. They learned all the basic skills for being able to live on their own. And I prepared them for growing up and moving on and living on their own and having a job and deciding on a career. And all this stuff we did really well, but we never followed a specific curriculum. And so there are pieces, of course, that are missing. We covered the big things in history, but there are other little things that now that I'm doing some things with my youngest, I'm like, ooh, we didn't cover that. Ooh, we didn't cover that. And so not that it's going to inhibit them being able to live life, because what we did do was we did do Christian living. So my kids are able to learn. And one of the key things I thought in my mind when I first started homeschooling was, if I can teach them to learn, they can do anything. No matter what I miss with them, they'll be able to learn it when they need it or when they want to, because they know how to read, they know their math, and they know how to learn. They know where to find the information and go to. They know how to find good information. And because that is...
Sorry to interrupt again. May we watch The Proud Family?
Sure, you may watch that. So that was kind of the goal, but what I really wanted to instill in them is Christian values, Bible memorization, reading the Word, praying together, putting others before ourselves, all of those key characteristics that make us into people that other people want to be friends with, that are a positive role models in the world. And so I didn't always do that the best, but I did. But that was one of the goals of our homeschooling. So fast forward now with a 5-year-old, and we are homeschooling, and we found this wonderful curriculum called Classical Conversations, and it's different than anything I've ever seen before, and I absolutely am loving the concept of it. We did it for a year so far, and I can't imagine ever joining in another. Not only is it a curriculum, but it's also a homeschool community. And when I say community, I mean we are doing life together, helping each other, supporting each other. Even when I was homeschooling the boys 10 years ago, there wasn't a whole lot out there in our area, and I didn't have a whole lot of support. So I felt like I was doing it on my own all the time. Now I have a community, and after COVID, it seems like homeschool boomed. People realized they could school their kids. You don't have to be qualified to teach your kids. You are qualified. God gave you those kids. He qualified you to raise them and to teach them. And so if anybody is considering homeschool, whether it's Classical Conversations or something else, this book, The Core by Lee Bortons, is an excellent book to help you work through some of the issues and some of the shortcomings of the school district these days. And the school district is cookie cutter. You have the opportunity to teach your kids and give them everything the world, everything in the world, everything. But with that, you also are there every day setting the example. So you are also being challenged to live a life that your children can model after. You are your children. You should be your children's role model. You should be the one that they are looking at too, and teaching them how to love the Lord, how to go to the Lord, how to pray, how to treat others better than yourself, how to have compassion. Like, that is my job. And these kids are going off to school, and their teachers are their role models and their friends. And I wanted to take that back. I am taking that back. I want to be the role model for my children. I don't want to send them off for the entire day, go to work, come home, have 2 hours with my kids, and I don't have time. I am not with them enough to be the one that they look to that's feeding into their lives the most important thing that you're going to give your kids, and that is God. Bible memorization, spending time in God's Word, praying with them, which I will admit is my probably weakest area, is praying with my children. But again, looking at my life and being able to go, oh, if I wouldn't want my kids doing that, why am I doing it? When I lose it with my children, being able to go back to them and say, hey, I shouldn't have acted like that. That's not your fault. That was my choice. You don't make me yell. And I'm sorry, and ask for forgiveness and explain. Not because I answer to my children, but because I answer to God to be the role model that guides them to Him. So, anyhow, my main reason for homeschooling is to be the influence over my children and to bring people into their lives that are the influence that are going to point them to the Lord, especially in these formative years. And education is important. It's all important, and that's covered in here. But the basis, for me, it needs to be all steeped in living a life, a godly life that's going to influence my family, that's going to influence my community, that's going to influence my friends, and that's going to stand the test of time. So that's all that I'm going to cover today. We're going to get a little bit more into more of the educational side, maybe in another video. But those are my reasons for homeschooling and how we got started and why we got started years ago. And if you have any questions, please feel free to comment below. I will say that I love my children. I never once since I started homeschooling have I wished that they went to school. Not one time. Since the day we brought them home, I have enjoyed them being in my presence every single day. And that's an act of God. It really is. Because no matter what, no matter how my children frustrate me or anger me, I never have wished to send them off to school into an environment that is going to be so toxic that they are going to struggle in these young years to really know who Jesus is, and to have that protective coating that helps them to not shelter them from the world, but to give them a space to learn who the Lord is and to love him and to be in an environment that loves them unconditionally. And maybe one day Sebastian will want to go to school in high school or whatever. My older ones are going off to college, so they're going off into the world. And my hope is that I have given them enough of a foundation in Jesus that they will be able to withstand anything that comes their way. Or if it's tough, that they'll know who to go to and who to turn to, and that their faith will stand the test of time. That's all I have for you today. I thank you for joining me, and I hope that if you are considering homeschooling, or even if you weren't before, maybe you are now, because it is the greatest gift that we can give our children.